great to be here. Thanks for inviting us. It's good to talk after this speech because this was really something I was always thinking about. You have to give me the name and exact title of that book. But unfortunately my talk is completely opposite, but it's good. I'll talk about art, culture and politics in today Bosnia and Herzegovina. And the title is just Art, Culture and Politics. Can I have a first slide, or shall I just...
Shall I do it by myself, or you can if you want to? It's back and forth.
Well, I mean, you can just
Okay.
shuffle through.
Okay.
This building is actually Austrian-Hungarian, kind of secessi style. So Sarajevo is full of these kind of beautiful buildings. Associated Press, Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina. It survived the breakup of Austrian-Hungarian Empire, 2 world wars, the longest siege in modern history, and a bloody war in 1990s that killed 100,000 people. Yet, after 124 years, Bosnian National Museum closed its doors Thursday due to 12-day state funding and dispute among rival ethnic groups. The Guardian said, Bosnia's National Museum, its latest victim of political funding crisis. Museum to close after 124 years as state government's power and fundings are eroded by antagonistic communities. The National Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina will close on Thursday after 124 years, the victim of political fundings crisis that is devastating the divided nation cultural institution. This paper will talk about art and culture and their relation with today's politics in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Politics has always influence on art and culture, but these days, unfortunately, they are deeply interrelated and most of the time inseparable. This could be illustrated with the story of 2 artists did by conceptual artist Braco Dimitrijević, who wrote, "Once upon a time, afar from cities and towns, there lived 2 painters. One day, the king, hunting neighborly, lost his dog. He found him in a garden of one of those 2 painters. He saw the works of the painter and took him to the castle. The name of the painter was Leonardo da Vinci. The name of other disappeared forever from human memory. These days, in my country, king's dog will never to be found. The art or cultural institutions with the state or national sign are either closed or slowly dying because of lack of funding. So what is the reason? In fact, Bosnia and Herzegovina is not that poor country. We are paying for one of the most expensive governments and the most complicated political system in Europe. As we can read in Massachusetts Review, quoting, this cannot be explained simply by the mismanagement of the institutions themselves. Statistics show that suffering of cultural institutions is not due to empty budget. In the period between 2007 and 2010, the government spent 11.8 billion convertible marks, which is approximately $7.82 billion. Bosnia and Herzegovina, cumbersome system of 1 state, 2 entities, 10 cantons and districts, sucked out of the most of it. During this period, 9.5 billion marks, or $6.29 billion, were used solely for covering the wages of those employed in public administration. And the government has shown no intention to slow down, all at the expenses of those who need the support the most. So, how that happened? What produced such a dysfunctional and freaky system? To understand, we have to go back some 20 years ago, where we witnessing probably the most violent war in recent European history. In Sarajevo, war took the form of medieval strategy of siege, one that employed long suffocation rather than rapid gain of territory. Being a native of a city, I kept thinking, was it a military and territorial strategy that dictated the rules of the city destruction? Or was it an attempt to nullify the culture of urbanity and cosmopolitan atmosphere for which Bosnian capital was famous for? It is tempting to think that is a second alternative that should be considered. There are enough evidences to suggest that throughout history urban centers were frequently became the target of non-urban destructive powers. But to think that in modern time the same pattern still applies, the buildings, centers of culture and art could be erased because of their urbanity and urban and social connotation is troublesome to say the least. Today Sarajevo is victim of yet another siege and suffocation of the places where people gather to live their collaborative lives and where the collective memory was stored, the places of culture and art. So why those places are being deliberately neglected? Although we know that reconciliation can only happen if they survive to remain the strongholds for comprehensive renovation of a social structure. It looks to me that some political fractions are deliberately maintaining tension that are based on recent war. They're deepening national separation, using national rhetoric and nationalic rhetoric and religion as a tool to continue to rule regardless their incompetence for social development and economic growth. BBC News wrote under the title "Financial Crisis Grips Bosnia Heritage Site," and they said, "The central government has no Ministry of Culture and no obligation to provide permanent funding for sites regardless of part of Bosnia-Herzegovina national heritage. The Dayton Peace Agreement, which ended in 92-95 war, split the country into two parts, linked by weak central government. The central government has no Ministry of Culture and no obligation to provide permanent funding for sites regarded as a part of Bosnia-Herzegovina national heritage. Bosnian Serbs largely oppose giving the central government control over the sites, with their politicians arguing that each of the country's ethnic groups should care for its own heritage. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, art and culture, as well as citizens, are held hostage by political tensions based on the existence of two separate entities. Not a single cultural institution with a state or national prefix is funded from a state budget. Republika of Srpska is not taking part of financial state institutions that are based in Sarajevo. On the other hand, the ruling parties of Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina are incapable of funding or trying to find the module of financing a national institution. Is that a lack of funds, or it's because they insist that institution of national importance should be financed by both entities? That explanation that is being given is budgetary, but the issue is highly political. Someone once said, all art is political in a sense that it serves someone's politics. The typical example of art being held hostage in Sarajevo is Sarajevo Haggadah. 600 years old Jewish manuscript, one of the country's most prized cultural relics, and very beautiful piece of art, became yet another victim of local politics, or what someone described as the continuation of a sort of silent war against multicultural values. That's it. No, that's okay. We just shuffle through. The New York Metropolitan Museum offered in November 2012 to host the relic for 3 years, But country's Commission for the Preservation of National Monuments, the only institution they could approve such a trip, conditioned the trip to New York with Bosnia and Herzegovina government to solve the legal status of museums. The Commission wrote, quote, appeals for immediate resolution of status and the functioning of the museum, which would end the jeopardy Bosnian heritage has found itself in. So what are they trying to achieve by locking Haggadah? To raise awareness in the European community or to find permanent funding for a building maintenance and 68 employees. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, directors of state funding institutions have become used to get salary, but they rarely earn it. Museum galleries and libraries often have to find fundings themselves. Metropolitan Museum offered money for hosting the Haggadah, off the records. What I'm going to say now. I heard from the confidential sources that Metropolitan Museum offered annual salary for museum staff in exchange for Haggadah, necessary renovations and percentage from the sold tickets, which they estimated around $1 million, of course. So what is the really behind this? Incompetence of director who is custodian and not the manager? Or this is political plot to keep Haggadah as a hostage and thus use cultural heritage in negotiation political deals? It is probably the both, but one is sure, Haggadah will stay hostage together with our collective memory in closed museum. Closed museum over there, there is a really good, yeah, that one. We have even planks on it. So, but I'll try to actually relax all this in terms that we still have some positive actions over there. The story behind National Gallery of Bosnia and Herzegovina is different. Gallery is being reopened a year ago after being closed for the same reason like National Museum. Galleries still have big financial problems, but competent new director who is more manager rather than person from the art world. Srđa Krsmanović, acting director appointed by local government, is in his business plan did a really small shuffling in the gallery and opening again, returning art to the normal operation. But he is a political manager whose only task is to keep gallery open. He is managing to do so by organizing smaller exhibitions, applying for funds through European projects and local government funds. Yeah, we can go further. That's Haggadah, beautiful. And that's the gallery of modern art in Sarajevo. One more Austrian-Hungarian, one more Austrian-Hungarian beautiful piece of SSA architecture. Next one, please. Yeah. The other partly success story is HRISAFOVIĆ, Museum of Contemporary Art. It was formed during the war as a resistant of culture. The collection consists of works of well-known contemporary artists who, out of solidarity with the people of besieged Sarajevo, sent their work between 1992 and 1995. They have donated work to the city. It has approximately 130 works by renowned world artists, including Pistoletto, Cornelis, Boyce, and Kossuth. The ex-director of HRISAFOVIĆ, Enver Hadžiomirspahić, has his team managing to stay in business for more than 20 years now. He is also a apolitical but highly competent art manager who dedicated his life to the idea of the Museum of Contemporary Art, regardless of lack of funding from the state. throughout its ups and downs, struggling with money, space, and political support, HRISAFOVIĆ stayed open for public throughout all these years. As new director Amila Ramanovic said, it is completely natural that every urban environment has its own museum for contemporary art, not as a space to display luxury, but as a space in which the population of Bosnia and Herzegovina can legitimize itself. Then she added, contemporary art is a space in which we create our legacy for tomorrow, while admiring something that we recognize today as of value. So, what will be the conclusion? Every conference paper has to have one, but this one unfortunately don't have any conclusion. We'll left you kind of thinking about art, politics, culture, how deeply interrelated we are, and how deeply separate actually we should be. What can we we'll leave you, what can we do to free the art and culture from the politics? Changing political option, changing the system, or changing the country? I'm talking about Bosnia and Herzegovina here solely. Or perhaps puppets of local politics, directors of museums and galleries, with someone who is capable manager, who will understand the importance of the places where our collective memory is stored, and the places that connect the people on the level of creation using art to communicate. Conceptual artist Dejan Jokanovic, who is also born in Sarajevo, made his artwork explaining the state of art in B&H, using Pevsner's word, saying, can you have another one? Saying, if you are looking for help, ask the artist where it is. If you cannot find artists, then you're already in hell. But then, I do believe that there is a good chance to find the artist or a king to find his dog in Sarajevo. There are many positive movements, projects, people who work toward better status of art and culture in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and they are here with you. I mean, they're present. And it is, as it said in manifest of declaration of Salzburg Sarajevo Academy, it said, although politics can provide sources, grounds for a culture, politics can never be put up against cultures. To understand cultures meaning to pave the way for responsible act of the political. Politicians, artists, and scientists will meet in Salzburg and Sarajevo to work on solving the conflict in Europe and Near East. And I certainly hope they will. Thanks. Thank you.